This is Joshua Robbins, and you're listening to the Balaker podcast.
Hello, good people out there. Thank you for tuning into the Matt Balaker podcast. If you want to earn extra credit, please encourage your friends to like, subscribe, share, and maybe casual acquaintances too. You don't have to limit it to only your friends. But I love you guys. And as a gesture of my love, I have an amazing guest. Because for nearly a decade, this gentleman has assisted oil and gas companies to help find their next deal. He's an Air Force veteran, father, husband. He helped create Helix, a digital price guide for the energy industry. Please welcome Joshua Robbins to the program. How are you doing, Joshua?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. You know, I'm excited to chat with you. I understand you're based in Oklahoma City. Is that where you grew up?
It is not. I actually grew up outside of Boston, and I have been in Oklahoma City for about 20 years now.
Okay, so you're born near Beantown. It's a pretty different area. What's the story there? How'd you go from Boston to OKC?
So she's gonna kill me for doing this, but I don't care. I'm gonna do it.
It's worth it. It's worth it for this.
Yeah, for sure. Hang on. So I get this message. It's 99. So there's no such thing as like profile pictures. There's no such thing as, and I get this message from this woman who says, hang on a minute. Okay. And she says, you want to move to, you want to come to Oklahoma City and meet and date? And I was like, absolutely. So in 1999, I had graduated from high school. I got on a Greyhound bus. It's 24-hour trip from Boston to Oklahoma City, and I met. She then became my wife shortly thereafter. We'd been married for 23 years.
Wow. Okay, wait. Slow down. So around 99, I would get some emails. There were usually requests to like join AOL Instant Messenger or send money to a prince somewhere in Africa. How did this hot girl? You just like, there's more to it. Like, you don't just get these emails. Like, what?
I'm telling you, man, it was crazy. So we were on AOL chat back in '99, and we met in just a random chat room in '99. There wasn't like this. There wasn't a network like there is now. There was, like I said, there's no.
So like your first question, do you guarantee you're female? Because this is a chat room in 99. Go ahead.
No, man, you don't even, her friends were like, he's an axe murderer. My friends were like, oh yeah, she's the model. You know what I mean? Like,
I love how your friends are, you're like, yeah, you just met her. It's worth ditching everything and going on a 24-hour bus ride. So you did it. What was the first like in-person interaction? I assume you didn't get married on first sight. I wouldn't blame you, but there's probably some courtship.
Yeah. So she didn't have, so in 99, personal computers were still relatively new. And so she was actually using her dad's computer at her dad's office. She said, we met online, and she said, would you, can you call me? And I said, absolutely not. There's a thing called long distance. Like, I can't, and that was to pay by the minute, sweetie. That's right. And she said, well, why don't I call you? I said, that's a great idea. That's an excellent idea. And so she called
you were
me.
Cheap from the get-go, but please continue.
So she called me, and then her dad got the phone bill for a month worth of calling Boston from Oklahoma City. And so I then called her for a month, and then my dad got the phone bill, and then we communicated via letter. So we wrote back and forth to one another our senior year in high school. And then I decided before joining the service, I'm going to go to Oklahoma City. I will, and hang out with my girlfriend, and it's going to be a
wait,
blast.
so she was your girlfriend at this point.
Yes,
This isn't like it was kind of a Monte Teo situation. Like, you were boyfriend, girlfriend before actually seeing each other.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly right.
So take us there when you get off the Greyhound bus, you meet, what was your first reaction?
Oh man, well, you're talking about, I'm 18, fresh out of high school, green. You know what I mean? I'm waiting to start my career in the service, and she's a redhead knockout. Like I was on cloud nine. I mean, it was the best time of my life, and so I went over to UPS, and I filled trucks and stuff during the, at night, to get some cash or whatever. But Oklahoma City in '99 was relatively small. So they had, they didn't have any professional sports teams.
Yeah, I was gonna say the Thunder were the Seattle Supersonics at
That's right. And they didn't get to the city until 08 or 09, I think. So it was a relatively small community type environment, and so it was cool to go from a Boston setting where there's millions of people in square miles, and then come out here, and the biggest thing I noticed was the sky. Like, you can actually see all of it's incredible. Anyway, that's
you're motivated by a woman in the sky, but you still had plans to join the Air Force.
Yeah.
What's the story there? What got you into the Air Force?
I was brought up, my grandfather was in the Navy, and he served in World War II, and I thought it was part of my civic duty to go into the service, and I should have been more specific on what I was doing in the service, but I went in open general, which means wherever the Air Force needs help, they put you in that job. And so they sent me to Cheyenne, Wyoming, and I worked the gate for a part of it. So security from the gate, and then as you grow in that, you work the base and the weapon storage, area protection, that kind of stuff. So that's that kind of put me into the day-to-day. But I had a lot of friends and a lot of family that came out to Wyoming, and I started a business on the side. So I was doing Air Force during the day, and on the side, I ran my own online record label called Poets and Rhythms. And
Poets and Rhythms.
Yeah.
You had your own record label.
Yeah.
So what type of artists did you attract?
Oh man, we were in Wyoming, but the Air Force, well, for all military bases are full of people from all walks of life, and so we got a little studio in downtown Cheyenne. We recorded some music. It was R&B, and it was a little bit of Beastie Boys type of stuff, and rhythm and blues, and jazz, and hip hop, and I mean there was a little bit of all of it, because that's where we all were. And in 99, 2000, 2001, the world was really starting to get a lot of music through that was the Napster development.
I was saying that was the Napster. That was the more shady file sharing era.
yeah, they shut all that down. But from an artist side, or from a label side, it was a cool time period, because you didn't have to be in LA or New York, and you didn't have to go through, I grew up outside of Boston. Like, I know you didn't have to go to the colleges and like put your music in the hands of those DJs, like, okay, play this, that's not how it works online. So
right. No, I mean, it's kind of accelerated since then. I mean, it extends beyond music, all of entertainment. Like, you used to seemingly have to be in Los Angeles or New York, or maybe somewhere, Philadelphia, I don't know, like a major hub, and
Yes.
now it's changed. But I'm curious, Joshua. So you were in the service,
Yeah.
prior to 9/11.
I was in
but then
during that. During,
so
during that, yeah.
like, talk us through that. Like, what was the mentality like? Call it, maybe September 10th versus September 12th, 2001.
Okay. So in my opinion, PTSD is real, and I believe that when you don't realize it till you're in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of petrifying to be, given orders like, here's the deal, here's a gun, go protect. Like, that's, if you're in another country or another world and that's what happens, like, it's very, there's a definite mindset to it. But on 9/11, it came to us. Like, all of a sudden, I didn't have to get orders to go fight in a war. It was literally, the TV was on and we watched the building collapse in New York. Like, it was real. And from a service side, everything went, we were on high alert. Everybody was in mock gear. Like, we're running around outside, full gear. We're like, it's war. Like, not for one day, for months. And so we worked like I worked the gate, and then there's a weapons storage area. And so we would split time, and the gate completely shut down. So during wartime, it's, you're if you're on the base, you stay there. And so it was, man, the difference in, going and having a job, and then having that happen, it was night and day. And I realized, okay, there's a reason that, we salute the people that are out there wearing the uniforms. There's a reason that we have the flag. There's like, all of it became extremely real almost overnight. You go in with this kind of general, America the brave, America the beautiful.
Yeah, it became tangible. It was no longer some kind of like academic or philosophical.
That's exactly right.
Pleasantry. It meant
that's
something.
right.
And then when did you get out of the service?
I got out 2003. I did 4 in, and then, 4, and right as Nick, my first, was being born, we moved back. We moved to her hometown in Oklahoma, so or outside of her hometown. So I was I did the label, and that was all side hustle stuff. That was all fun, and Jen said, we're pregnant, we're gonna have a baby. Yes, and then realized, oh well, these children cost money, and so
they do. Yeah.
So I started working nights at Lowe's. So I worked so after it settled down, after 9/11 settled down, I got back into the schedule. I worked at Lowe's, and at the time, Lowe's was growing. They weren't in the towns like they are now, but essentially they said, hey, you are an Air Force vet, and wherever you want to go, you've got a job. And I thought, how freaking cool, And so there's a little town outside of Tulsa, Oklahoma called Owasso, and it is huge now. But back in the day, all that was there was a Lowe's. And so we moved back to around Tulsa, and I worked up there, and really started to develop sales strategy. I mean, worked in sales, learned commissions and that kind of stuff through them, and then got a job at a place in Tulsa called Hilti.
Hilti, okay.
Hilti is construction tools, and so I learned inbound, outbound sales from that company. They're fantastic. They're a construction tool organization, but there's only one location, and my grandfather and father were appliance repair guys, and that was their thing, was construction tools. So,
So do you know how to fix things? Because I'm not afraid to admit, Joshua, like our dishwasher was broken, and my wife broke out her tool set and fixed it while I cleaned up after her and said thank you. Did you inherit some of the handyman skills from your dad and grandpa?
I did a little bit. You end up getting a lot of tools and a lot of experience. You saw the picture. So when my wife says do something, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I got to do it. I got to do it.
Good boy. So yeah. You leave the service. You're working at Lowe's, different sales positions, and I know now you're pretty heavily involved in energy. Where did this come from? Like, how did that happen?
Yeah, so working at Hilton, it was great. It was an awesome gig. But we had 2 kids at the time, and Tulsa, even though it's an hour and a half from Oklahoma City, it was too far to see family on a consistent basis. And Jen, she comes from a family of, I think, 23 first cousins. So it's a very, very big, a family based. And so that was, she wanted that. And so I decided to leave there and come back to the city and start working in Oklahoma City. And her sister said, I am in the energy business doing environmental sales, and you should definitely check this out. And so I started to learn oil field compliance and engineering. So I went into this completely green back in 07, 08. And at the time, Obama had been elected, and there was a significant push toward green initiatives. And so essentially what we did was write up the engineering that says, should something happen, there's got to be a containment area to contain whatever you have. And it's got to be certified by a professional engineer. And so I did a lot of inside sales first. And then as I developed, I started to go out and meet the people in the business. So doing some outbound, outside sales. And so that started my road life, which developed into something much, much bigger. So I started to do that. I started to talk to the people about, okay, you've got these oil wells, you've got to have them in compliance. And they started to talk to me about, well, what if I want to sell them? Like, I'm like, well, what if you want to sell them? Like, what do you normally do? And essentially it's an eBay process or a negotiated sale process that existed, which was highly popular, where they would just put that information out there, and whoever made the largest bid would get the assets. And I said, well, if that's the sales process, I am more than happy to help you out. And so I started this on the side, doing essentially, broker deals on an individual well basis. So, John wanted to sell well number 1 to Jack, and I'd talk to John and Jack and put them both in the same room, and when we got the deal done. So
you're the guru of side hustles, Joshua. So I know historically, when people think about like a well deal, it's like, hucksters are the first thing. It's like the classic. All right, I got scammed by someone trying to sell oil where it didn't exist. I guess for the lay people out there, like, what are the initial kind of BS testers? Because credibility is everything. If you're selling someone's
absolutely
that isn't legit, it's
absolutely. So and just so you know, it's instantaneous. When you do something and you're successful at it, people come out of the woods. I mean, it is instantaneous, where you've got to be able to test that BS almost instantaneously. And so everything I did was already producing wells. So is it
Okay.
already making oil? Fantastic. Because I got into one deal and it was, hey, it's going to. No, you can't guarantee going to. You can guarantee already doing. But and so from a sales perspective, that was my first test. Like, okay, it's got to actually be making oil. And then if it doesn't fit your portfolio, if this one well out of 100 that you own doesn't, it takes too long to get to it. It's got problems. It's this or that's the other. Then cool. Let's talk about what those issues are and let's identify what you want to sell it for.
Interesting. And if you're selling homes, you usually have to be a real estate agent. Like what sort of systems are in play? Like, yeah, how does one do this?
Yeah, that's a great question. So through all of the time that oil and gas has existed, it has been a for sale by owner primarily, right?
Okay.
These are $1 million assets. They are, that's pretty much how it operates. And so there's business development time, but for the most part, it's direct. So it's oil company and oil company communicating directly. But it's got to be, for the most part, they're operating their companies independently of one another. So they don't know that this is for sale or that's for sale. So it became more of a business development role as opposed to come in, take this test, join our firm, we get 1%, and good luck to you in the down market, real estate brokerage firm idea. That's not what it is. That's not what it looks like in the business. For the most part, they're either auctioneers, investment banks, people that are already connected to the asset in some form or fashion. Whereas I came in on a business development side that said, okay, let's optimize portfolios and let's see what works.
You want to optimize portfolios and see what works. So, like lots of people might grow up in the E&P industry. You didn't. So it was kind of a new venture. What surprised you the most? Like what's something that you think might be a misconception about the U.S. oil industry that outsiders have?
That's a good question. So oil's not dirty.
Okay. I mean, I've got on my hands, it can be dark and like, what is it then if it's not dirty?
So it's carbon. And I think the general idea is a giant misconception at a global scale of what it is, right? I just don't think that, again, when you have $1 million assets, these are not publicly outgoing people, the people that are loud and globally seen, the Chesapeakes of this world. I mean, they hired thousands and thousands and thousands of people and use the education and knowledge of how to go get the oil and gas and how to do it profitably very, very well. So in the last 20 years, it's really optimized. The field is really working towards optimization. But what really surprised me was just the down to earth community that existed. Again, coming from outside of Boston, I had no earthly idea how the lights turned on. No idea, where, obviously.
I still don't, but yeah, please continue. Yeah.
And so, but anyway, that was probably the biggest surprise to me was just, how environmentally friendly the oil community is. All of them, they all want more forest, they all want more field, that's their mentality, and it's just not perceived that way on a global scale.
No, I mean, I think it's a good point, because like in pop culture, they're so vilified. You think these like fat cat oil tycoons, I mean, it's a trope at this point. And I think a lot of these stereotypes are brought on by people, who have no actual understanding or interaction with folks in the business. And I include myself in that, not that I'm trying to propagate these stereotypes, but I'm certainly no expert in it. But years ago, I was involved in some, analyzing some deals for it. And again, I don't want to take my experience and forecast it out, but the amount of safety measures they took, I mean, it's kind of like if you own a fishery, just to use a different example, you want there to be fish for your generation, your parents, your kids, and so on. You have a financial incentive to make it last. You're not like, oh, I hate this beautiful lake that I live 4 miles from. I'm going to pollute it with CO2, with like dirty oil because I'm greedy. It's pretty ridiculous. Sorry, pardon the rant.
No, I love it.
But and another idea I want to get your thoughts on, and it's certainly not grounded in great science, but I remember as a kid, I was probably in middle school or junior high, hearing in 15 years, we're going to run out of oil. And then 15 years, in 12 years, we're going to run out of oil. Like, when are we going to run out of oil? And why haven't we yet, Joshua?
Okay. Excellent question. So I think there's a misconception of get it. I think I think people assume that it's a gas tank that will run on E and then there's nothing else to put in. That's not the case. So just think of it over time. So when we first discovered it, you're talking about Rockefeller, time period, 20s. The carbon was it wasn't as deep. Mm-hmm. You didn't have to drill down so far to get it, right? And
you can just take a soup spoon and just scoop it up. Okay.
I've literally seen hand dug wells. Okay. And so you can literally dig 700 feet down and hit oil, and they did. And so over time, there's less at 700 feet. There's less at 1,000 feet. There's less at there. Okay. So now we're at 10,000. In order, and going back to the home improvement, you can, if you look at it from a home improvement scale, you can fix a item within your kitchen. You can redesign your whole kitchen, and you can redesign your house. And so what we're doing right now is a whole lot more in depth and literally and figuratively on how far we have to go in order to get it at a profitable price. Okay. So that's when they talk about running out, in my opinion, it's running out of easy, cheaper oil-based product that doesn't have to be refined as much, that can go straight to market. Whereas, if you're going to use it for plastics, all your plastic is all processed in different midstream facilities, so it looks different, but it's carbon. It's a tangible carbon-based product. And so what does that look like, and how much is that going to cost, and how does that relate to how do you develop more of it? Well, that's where you're getting that mixed message of we're running out. We're just running out of inexpensive. And to be completely frank with you, it's because the oil business is viewed as dirty and non-investable. And when you remove the investable dollars from the oil business, the product gets more expensive. And
okay, that makes sense.
That's kind of, again, these are all my opinions.
So sometimes you have to dig deeper, and that's how you can get more.
That's right.
You mentioned, Joshua, we're at the beginning of an energy transformation. What do you mean by that?
Oh my goodness. How much time do we have?
48 seconds. So be thorough, but finish in, under a minute, please.
Okay. So energy transition. So we are realizing at a global scale that solar will work, wind will work, hydro will work. At Beachwood, we have communicated with 17 separate types of energies. I didn't even know that was a
17,
thing.
Wow.
17 separate types of energies. because when you break it down to a molecular level, we have the ability and the technology to transfer it into the types of energy that it is. And so if you need something to move a gear, you can use wind, or you can use hydro, or you can use the solar heat. But if you need actual fuel, you need a carbon-based source. And so what people are realizing is that you can transition from oil in specific spots that don't require fuel. And if you can power it utilizing other forms of energy, it may be less expensive. However, as you can imagine, there's a lot of policy, there's a lot of hurdles in which to get this to a point where it makes sense for the 99, not for the one, if that makes sense. So
okay. And you mentioned 17 forms of energy. What are some of the, I guess, more obscure ones that you think have a bright future?
Honestly, there's not energy that I don't think has a bright future. I think we're going to realize that, through the bioengineering processes that are coming into play on a lot of different education programs, that you're going to see bio-to-waste energy. You're going to see some significant development on the hydroelectric side, because you can utilize rainwater, you can utilize lake water, and there's a lot of subsurface water that you can use to power things. So I think those are kind of the brightest futures in my opinion.
That's interesting. So it's not as if you're some petroleum hawk that only touts one form. I mean, you seem pretty, agnostic when it comes to source. Like, how is this going to change what you do, though, Joshua?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So I am agnostic. I realize that we need energy, and that it doesn't all come from the one giant, one source. And so, when I talk through building the Helix, it was about the value, right? How do you value an oil well? How do you value an oil field? How do you value a solar field? How do you value a wind farm? Like, how do these things correlate, and how can you properly invest in them where it makes sense? And I went in from that perspective. And so for the next 30 years, it's more about optimizing the entire infrastructure, because the transition is going to be, what's the easiest, cheapest, best way to do it? And let's do that. And it could be, from a housing or community section, or a business development, or there's a lot of ways to do it.
Yeah. Do you ever envision, like in our lifetime, or maybe our children's, where we're essentially, off the grid, or when primary energy is developed at the home, whether it's solar or some sort of personal nuclear source? I don't know what it is, but now it seems like we have these power plants, and they have to funnel energy through all these kind of archaic mechanisms. Maybe it's efficient, maybe not. But what say you?
So I think of things. I reverse engineer a lot of things, right? And so, in my opinion, I don't think that the grid should shut down. That seems counterproductive. What it should be is that self-sufficient communities should be able to help the grid when it needs it, and then be off the grid when you don't need it. If you can build a community that's funded, or that's powered by its own solar, by its own hydro, by its own oil and gas, whatever the energy is that's processing it on a microgrid scale, that could help. Like, if that community could provide the grid with more energy, I think as you see developments start to change from, what we currently live into the future, I think they're going to look at maybe seeing what that looks like in the future.
So it takes a village to raise a grid, is what you're saying.
That is exactly right. That is exactly. You can't. It's not. This is not an independent thing. It is a community.
It's cooperative
at scale. Yep.
Well, I want to throw a hypothesis at you, and I'm sure Gavin Newsom's listening. I can't imagine he's not an avid subscriber to this program, but and I believe this like sincerely, when it comes to lots of things, if there's only one version of it, that's a bad setup. Whether it's plants, people, energy, homes, pretty much. Like, I look at like, the tulip crisis. It's like if everything's the same, one outside entrant can ruin it. And I live in California, and gosh, pretty recently we had a lot of power outages, and it was around the same time when we're trying to move seemingly everything to electricity. And again, I have nothing against electricity. I use it. Some of my best friends use electricity. But what seems to be annoying, and this, I could very well be wrong, so please don't be sensitive to my delicate feelings, Joshua. If we're so reliant on one thing, it seems like ripe for disaster. Like, for instance, if I can't have a gas stove and we have to go electric because of some regulation that should take place in 2030 or what have you, not only could I not eat, but I can't have power. Whereas at least if I have gas or natural gas, there's some diversity of sources. So we're not so reliant on one supply. And it's like, so what do you like? What is your reaction to this? Can you put it in better terms than I'm obviously mumbling? So you take it from here, please.
So, okay. When the 1% or when the government or the agencies that are in charge of verifying and making sure the power exists are in charge of it, they're going to optimize as much as they can. If one person can do it, or if one system can accomplish 99% or 90% of what it needs to do, they're going to go with the easiest, most optimal option, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas when you look at it from an individual, like you said, with houses, with individual options, people like their choices, right? Mm-hmm. And choice and optimization of shut down choice to save and make more, like that, they are opposing forces. And okay. So it requires more communication of either education from a hey, if you give that option to the people in charge, they may take it from you. I saw an article from Australia that said they're going to, anything over 220, they on the grid have it marked, and they could turn off that power. So if you want to plug in your car at 32 volts, that's, or whatever it is, it's larger than 220, they can just shut that off. And if that's going to be the future of, hey, we'll just turn the power off, that's not sustainable over time. No. So it's
in California, it shuts off on its own. We don't really need help turning it off, but we've got you beat.
Yeah. So I think it, again, I think you said it right. It takes a village to raise a grid.
Well, and it brings up other ideas, like for instance, if we're talking about electric cars.
Yeah.
If 100% of people had electric cars, I'm sure there'd be some sort of over battery utilization, and there might be some issues we can't think of. There'll be unintended consequences. How do you store these batteries? Are they going to fill up landfills? It just seems like an over reliance on any one thing is going to lead to problematic results. So that's the end of my rant.
Yeah. That's I think that's what people see. I think that we as a collective whole have access to more information now. We're all starting to ask these questions like, okay, cool. What is the answer? Which energy is used? How can we optimize this?
It's like version Y is great. Everyone must use it and only it. It's like, no, that's not what we're saying. It's saying like add it to the collective.
Right.
So you created Helix.
Yes.
And it sounds like a cool opportunity for kind of people who aren't industry insiders to invest or get involved with energy transactions. Can you tell us more about it, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So from a broad scale, so that what I wanted to do for the Helix was provide wealth through monthly cash flow. That's what people want is monthly cash flow that they can rely on that builds fiscal wealth, period. And
passive income is sexy, people.
That's exactly right. And being, in my personal opinion, being excellent at sales is you're selling 1 in 3 pitches or 2 in every 5. Okay, so you're excellent at what you do if you're closing those kind of numbers. If you are excellent at sales, you want to sell the most expensive things, which is why you see as many realtors as that exist right now in the market, is because when you are excellent at what you do, at selling something, you go to the biggest ticket items that exist, right? If you can sell a dishwasher, right? Or if you could sell a house, like the commissions are night and day, the fiscal wealth is night and day. And so I looked at it from these are private and public energy asset sales. They're $1 million a pop. Like that, okay, let's try that. Let's see how that works. And if you can sell them, you can make cash. If you own them, you can make cash. You've got to be able to understand them and understand how they work. And so for the last 9 years, I worked side by side with private equity-backed oil and gas firms that were buying. Like that's what they were tasked to go build billion-dollar organizations. And so I was in the buying chair of $3 billion companies and saw how they valued, what the metrics were. Was the return, did they actually hit the return metrics? Because, I started in 2014. So 9 years is enough time to see, okay, did it work? Did it not work? And so that's essentially the Helix. The Helix is a place where you can go and see the opportunities at scale. So you want to own a $5,000 well, you can. If you want to own $500,000 worth of wells, you can. If you want to own $500 million worth of wells, you can. But you just have to know the process to get them to buy them. And so we streamline that and over the last 2 years really built out the system to house all of the data.
Very cool. So we're wrapping up. We'd love to have you back so we can continue. But now that you're this very important energy entrepreneur, what advice would you give to yourself from, say, in 1999?
Oh my gosh. If I saw myself in 99, I would say a couple of things. One, family does not live forever. Forgive anything that you could possibly think of and be present with family. Second, business is numbers and math, and the better you are at math, the better you are at business. And it's primarily that's where you want to stay. And then you've got to be able to communicate it out. So knowing English, knowing how to speak to people in written form is so important. Those would be the 3 things that I would say: English, math, and family.
It's like elementary school all over again. So
yes,
important stuff. Joshua, what are you most proud of, like business-wise, or I guess answer it however you feel compelled to do so.
So my kids are both at the University of Oklahoma. One is in the architecture program, one is in the microbiology program, and they are my biggest. I am their biggest fan, and really, it's tough to raise kids in today's world. Well, in every world, but in today's world, it's tough. They had access to everything. It was like they didn't have to ask how things work. They just went on YouTube and checked it out and did it. So it was a cool time period to raise kids. But as far as business is concerned, I'm really most proud of the business as it stands now, growing. It's one thing to do it yourself, right? I was able to understand that I could do, I could sell things. And so I was making $350,000 a year by myself. That's fun, but when you're doing it alone, it's not as fun as if you had a whole team of people that also, could create wealth and build and grow. And I think that's a different skill set for sure. A salesperson and a CEO. So learning that CEO role and building it out, and Ruben, our vice president, Ruben Perez, and Carol Gonzalez, our CFO, and Matthew LeBlanc, our CRO, our executive team build out is probably that's probably my most proud business moment. And then obviously we went public. So that was, we're C Corp, so the general public can invest in us, which is completely different from an LLC and a sole proprietorship and an S Corp. So learning that whole type of was probably also something to be proud of.
Very cool. Congratulations. And to people out there who want to learn more about you, they might be curious about the Thunder season. They like your hair, whatever. Like, where can we funnel these people, Joshua? Yeah,
absolutely. So if you're in Oklahoma City and you want to see the Thunder, come by the office, 50 Penn Place. It's in Pennsylvania and Northwest Expressway. We're on the 5th floor, I'd love to meet greet people. So I go out and face to face. And so there's a lot of meetings everywhere. Beachwood Helix, it's BEA. So it's just like the beach. Beachwoodhelix.com is where you can find us, the team, and how you can get a hold of me.
Cool. Well, Joshua, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was fun. It's fun. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Matt Balaker podcast. To learn more, please check out mattbalaker.com and encourage your friends to like, subscribe, and share. Really appreciate it.